And I think the psychology field could benefit greatly from that. Educational field could benefit greatly from that. Just to give you an idea, psychologists, right? So if we could put them in the shoes of their future patient, and we could show them how their future patients, what do they feel, that would, I think, would make it different, because that's really important, that sort of thing. So the possibility for virtual reality, and combined with AI, combined with the other technologies, are huge. We started talking to psychologists and psychiatrists, and the first thing we saw that it's a very low tech. Psychology right now, psychiatry right now is a very low tech. It's like probably the kind of a lowest, any kind of a technology implementation, in any field. Right. But also a lot of them, they're not opposed to the idea that, there is something else, like to look at something else that they could help. I mean, that could help them. Right. And there's a whole bunch of people right now who are actually recognizing the shortcomings, they're facing, and they're trying to find something better.
Welcome to Brainwaves by Opus, the podcast where we sit down with industry leaders to unpack their journeys, explore the key challenges in behavioral health, and talk about how innovation is changing care from the inside out. I'm your host, Sean Rickenbacker, and today we'll be talking about how virtual reality may be changing the way we approach treatment for some mental health challenges. Our guest today is Peter Oykhman, the co-founder and CEO of PsyTech VR, a company using virtual reality to transform mental health therapy. Peter is a visionary tech leader with over 30 years of experience in software development and entrepreneurship, having founded and successfully exited 3 tech companies along the way. Now he's applying that expertise to help people overcome challenges like anxiety, phobias, and PTSD through immersive VR therapy experiences. He also serves as co-chair of the VR/AR Association's Healthcare Committee, keeping him at the forefront of innovation in VR for wellness and mental health. Peter, again, super excited to have you on the show. I'm excited to learn about your mission and how you're helping to innovate in the mental health space. Can you share with us how you got to where you are at and how you started PsyTech VR?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, Sean. It's very, very exciting, very, very interesting. So I probably will start a little bit earlier. So I've been running my own business for the last probably 30 plus years, probably since early mid 90s. So, and I'm sure you know that if you're running your own business, it's a highly stressful environment.
Totally get
And
that.
there is always an anxiety involved. You're either kind of looking for contracts, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay your employees, or you got the contracts and how you're going to deliver to your customers, all kinds of. So there is always anxiety. And my journey is kind of fairly simple. So it's IT business. I love the technology. Around probably 2019, 2018, 19, I knew about virtual reality for a long time because it's been around for a while. But it wasn't really. It's not a mainstream, but I would say that it was never really a thing that people would just go and buy it and will start using it. And that's essentially what happened with Oculus Quest. Then it's a Meta Quest. But then I was like, well, now it's interesting. Now I could go to the store and buy it for about $300. It's getting interesting. And I started looking for the use cases, and I have zero knowledge of psychiatry and psychology, and it was my partner and I told him straight up that the most important thing is the use case. So you have to find a use case where it would make a difference. It would make a significant kind of a improvement comparing to what's going on right now. And we looked at a few cases, we looked at the, learning management and other things, end up with psychology, psychiatry. We both knew very little about, honestly. And that's pretty much, pretty typical for the founders, apparently, that they're getting into something they don't know anything about, but they have a pretty good idea. And this, my actually partner, his mom was actually a psychologist, and we started talking, and about how psychology is, what's going on with psychology right now. And she's like, yeah, well, there is definitely a possibility, because traditionally it's imaginary exposure. Not all of my clients can do that. Moreover, I have no idea what's going on, and some of these things are really hard to imagine. And so, yeah, it would be nice if somebody would show it to them. And this is how we essentially, I was like, yeah, we could actually create something and start start experimenting with that. But then we realized essentially that we need a platform. So instead of just build a whole bunch of scenarios, we have to start with a platform. We build a platform, then we start creating this exposure. Then we realize that we need a lot of mental wellness as well, because again, people are stressed. They need some mental wellness, and this is how it's all kind of started. Um, I would honestly say that we started in around COVID, and that gave us another kind of very interesting kind of a insight, because people had all kinds of anxiety during COVID, and social anxiety was most common, and people were locked down again, thanks to our government. I don't want to point any fingers, but that created a whole different level of some people with issues, where they were locked and didn't have a communication, and we're all social creatures, and it's created a whole kind of a related to usually people are not talking about the whole social aspect of COVID, and the way it has been handled. Nobody cared about mental health. People were talking about, it's like, oh, you're going to transmit this COVID, or like do a vaccination or no, don't do a vaccination. Nobody wanted to talk about mental health, and that was turns out that was one of the biggest things that kind of the problem, still an issue even after all these years, the social aspect. So that we also try to figure out what to do with it, and we think that we have a pretty compelling argument that virtual reality, being immersive, being so engaging, could create this alternative that people didn't have before. And that it's a long answer, but that's essentially how the whole thing started.
I love that. I think I speak to a lot of people in the behavioral health space, obviously. And one thing that's almost like certainly the case for most people I speak to is COVID, right? It was such a difficult time physically, emotionally, socially, etc. And it gave way for all these fantastic behavioral health organizations, right?
Right. It's somewhere similar. And again, people don't want to kind of talk about it, but like all these colleges, universities, and I have like 3 kids in colleges, and COVID started. All these colleges, small colleges, large colleges, they had a Blackboard license. They had a Canvas license. They just never used it, and it was mind blowing. Like, why my kids are like, oh yeah, our professor is saying like, don't worry about it, since it will be 6 months later it will be over. So we don't want to switch to some Blackboard. We don't want to learn Blackboard or Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we? We're good. And then like 2 years later, like you're still not good. You're
Yeah.
still, and they had these licenses for decades. Just nobody ever used it, and that's what kind of killing me. That like you had this learning management platform within your organization. You already paid for it and never used it.
Yeah, it's went to school during that time, and so I'm very familiar with Canvas and all that. But it's so interesting with these like platforms you had, like you mentioned, VR was around for a while before you started PsyTech, and we just weren't utilizing what we had, right? There's certain innovations we can do and create new technology, but there's so much innovation to be done with just how we use our current platforms, right?
No, 100%. And I don't know if you are aware, but virtual reality has been around since mid 60s. So it's been created in the mid 60s, but again, it's been too big, complicated, and everybody was experimenting with it. Like Sony was experimenting, and like all this, IBM was experimenting with that. It was super cool technology. It just never really got into this retail space because it was too complicated and too expensive. Palmer Luckey, actually, that's a guy who essentially made it kind of publicly available. And he created these headsets that, like for $300, nobody can, nobody even saw that it's possible. And then it, people are like, oh, it actually, you could do something about it. So it's very, the technology, we're just in the beginning. When people are just talking about that, we know what it is. No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't know what it is. We don't know what possibilities. I just read an article, as a matter of fact, a couple days ago. It was a research about virtual reality. People were trying to application in virtual reality for schizophrenia, and they had some absolutely amazing results. And it's a treatment resilient schizophrenia, whatever the term is, and they had absolutely great results. And yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised. I know that this virtual reality has huge possibilities. I'm trying to be kind of in the middle of that. That's one of the reasons why I became this co-chair in a VR AR association, just to see what's going on there, because every day something is happening.
We've got new innovations all the time, and it's hard, especially with the AI age every coming about, like keeping up with it and keeping ahead of it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the questions I have is, if I were a patient, what
Mm-hmm.
does it look like as far as using the PsyTech VR platform?
So, I could show it because we have an application on a desktop, and how it looks like. But essentially, what it does, it has two parts. It has an exposure part, exposure therapy. We have a pre-built exposures for a standard kind of a cases, and we have an AI that actually will create will help you to create an exposure therapy for gradual exposure using AI, using prompting. And there is a visual, you could add some sounds, again, AI generated sounds, and all kinds of stuff. So, but it's only a part of it, because depending on if you do a CBT or MDR, we have both modalities. You also have a mental wellness part where, after exposure therapy, you will go do a mental wellness, and you could create your own safe space. You could add this meditation and, breathing exercise in your own kind of, again, we have a predefined locations or pre-built locations, or we have actually AI that, will build allocation for you, and you could transition and you could breathe. Because like for every therapy, the point is not to make you anxious or stressed. The point is to teach you how to after being stressed, how to go back to normal, how to do it, better, faster, more effective. So we have these two sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a study report showing that there was a 50 to 60% reduction in anxiety symptoms with VR exposure therapy. What kind of results or feedback are you seeing from your users so far? Like any success stories?
Oof. first of all, again, it's a really, really interesting subject. Clearly, you did your background, but I don't know if you go to a Google Scholar and type virtual reality exposure therapy, the body of research, it's over 200,000 or 250,000 articles on a subject of effectiveness of virtual reality exposure therapy since mid 90s. So the whole research about virtual reality exposure therapy, and our advisor is one of the founders of kind of the whole virtual reality exposure therapy, Skip Rizzo, and he started experimenting with that in mid with PTSD and all these other wonderful things, CPTSD and such. And since then, people are experimenting with virtual reality and exposure therapy with the stress, with anxiety. I mean, frankly speaking, when I just looked at it, it seems like overwhelming that and it's not like one research. It's all these 200,000 plus. They're all talking about the same thing. It's very effective. It's kind of a produce much better results much faster. And I mean, there's some kind of like you're reading some research and kind of it's not like the conclusion is not very clear, right? All these articles, they're saying the same thing. It's effective. It's effective. It's much better. What they're talking about is even the technology has changed, right? So if you will do so the equipment they used like 20 years ago, the programs they used 20 years ago are completely different from what's available right now. But even with the older equipment, with the older technology, it was still effective. And if you will add this new technology and new equipment, it's even more effective because I mean, technology changed so much. I mean, like 20 years for a technology, it's like a lifetime.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially, it just keeps getting faster and faster that new innovations are happening, right?
Right. And now we got like a 8K, and like before 2K was like a great. Now people are like, yeah, now like if you have a 4K, kind of like, yeah, it's a little bit better, but 8K is really where you want to be. I was like, you're crazy. I don't think the human eye could actually see the difference, but
Yeah, even like P was the standard for so long, and now it's like you said, 2K, 4K, 8K. Now it's like we're probably going to get 16K in the next year or so.
Yeah, I just went to AWE in June, and damn, they got a new stuff coming out, new headsets coming out. It, it's crazy. It's like a form factor. It's just like a sunglasses. Looks like that, and you got this augmented reality there, and it's like, okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of cool innovations there. I kind of want to pivot. I know that you've been a serial tech entrepreneur with multiple successful companies already. And you mentioned before that you and your co-founder didn't really have psychology experience. How has your experience been shifting into the behavioral health, mental health therapy space compared to your other ventures?
It's a great question, and serial entrepreneur sounds like a serial killer, but yeah. So, but the, as I told you, I haven't been involved with the psychology or psychiatry, but I've been involved with anxiety my whole life. So, like, probably according to World Health Organization, me and another 80% of world population. So it's like, yeah, that's normal. So never went to never met a psychologist and psychiatrist except for one time during my divorce, which wasn't really a great experience. Granted that this psychologist lady was horrible, and that was my experience. We started talking to psychologists and psychiatrists, and the first thing we saw that it's a very low tech. Psychology right now, psychiatry right now is a very low tech. It's like probably the kind of a lowest, any kind of a technology implementation, in any field. Right. But also a lot of them, they're not opposed to the idea that, there is something else, like to look at something else that they could help. I mean, that could help them. Right. And, uh, there's a whole bunch of people right now who are actually recognizing the shortcomings, they're facing, and they're trying to find something better. And we met at tons of very open-minded people who actually, and some of them are actually became our advisors, who actually wants to see this as an opportunity to do better or to help their patients in a more effective way, right? And it's still very conservative field, psychology and psychiatry, partially because I have to say their education. So by nature, if you're talking about psychologists and psychiatrists, um, uh, they will use what their colleges and universities told them to use, this tool set, right? So that's why we're actually working right now with colleges and universities, trying to give them an idea that there is something else there. They're already doctors. They're already sort of experts in the field, right? So they got their degrees, they got their grad degrees, they got their PhDs and such MDs, and of course when you're coming to them and you're telling them like, let me show you what else we can do. Some of them were like, no, we're good, and
Totally get that.
right, and some of them were like, okay, I know that I don't know everything. Show me. And if it could help me with my patients, absolutely. And I have to say that it's a little bit challenging because you're introducing a different technology. It's a little bit challenging because typically we're dealing with people. I'm in my early 60s, but you're dealing with people kind of from mid 40s to mid 50s, right? So not always great with the technology, but and that is okay. I don't know if you're aware, but a VR headset is actually qualifies as a mobile device because it has a screen, a keyboard, and internet connection. So that's all the qualifications of a mobile device. Our application is very simple. Our training is very kind of basic. So it's not that scary. And when people will put it, but advantages are obvious. So when people will put these headsets and they will see what is there that is completely kind of different. Most of the people is like, yep, I can see why. I can see the difference. So sometimes it's hard for them to convince. It's hard for us to convince them to put headsets on, but after they
Yeah, it's really about, jumping in. I want to go back to what you said earlier, where a lot of the like psychiatrists, psychologists that got their advanced degrees and they still do like what they learned in school.
Mhm.
What's the difference between somebody who is wanting to innovate for their patients and somebody that is kind of old school, does it the same way they've always done it?
It's for me, it's in a way ironic that people who are supposed to be open-minded, psychologists and psychiatrists, they're so closed-minded. It's I found it's a little bit ironic, but I also I think they're in a way afraid to try something different. They are like all of us, and this is why it's ironic. They're afraid to fail. It's not that they don't want to try. They're afraid to fail, and this fear of failure. They're the ones who should recognize that that's okay. Even if you're 40 or 50, you still could fail. That that there is nothing wrong with that, but they're not going to fail. It's not that complicated. It's not that overwhelming. It's actually fairly simple.
Yeah, I love that. I think as well, we have this fear of these new platforms because, like you mentioned, a lot of people are afraid of it being complicated and overwhelming. But when you've got something that just works, a platform that works for you, not just with
Mm-hmm.
you, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that is the right thing, especially for the mental health space.
No, and we know that because it's already like, hundreds of people went through our training. We actually taught hundreds of people. We know that, yeah, I mean, we had some pretty kind of interesting cases where, people in their mid 70s, mid 80s are trying to do this and their computers are not working. And yeah, there are still kind of interesting cases, but, I mean, my parents who are in the mid 80s, computers are complicated for them. I mean, and it's not, I mean, they're doing a basic stuff, but if I will ask them to go and play with the virtual reality, they probably will say no. But again, my father, who is actually PhD in a computer science, he started with the mainframes. So he remembers the mainframes. So that's his computers. Yeah. So, but overall, I would say that by now we all have phones. We all have a cell phones, and we're not afraid of the cell phone, which is a way more complicated device than VR headsets.
Yep.
Just to be honest, it's like with the number of applications and complexity of a modern cell phone, it's a way more complicated than VR. If you can handle your cell phone, you should be okay with VR.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things, like we mentioned before, it feels overwhelming to keep up with all these innovations, keep up with the new things. And it feels like things are
Mm-hmm.
just getting faster and faster. But like
Mm-hmm.
we got to give ourselves some grace and some confidence. Like you mentioned, smartphones are super complicated. These
Mm-hmm.
platforms like PsyTech and, VR headsets and even Opus, it's not complicated compared to what you have in your pocket all day, every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people don't, like at least a lot of people, they don't recognize a complexity of the device they're carrying, and it's the processing power is just crazy, and I can honestly tell you that when you know what it is, it's scary. It's absolutely scary because you're carrying such a powerful computer in your pocket. The basics, I mean, it's a two-way radio. It's not a it's a computer. It's a supercomputer in your pocket.
Yeah. I mean, most phones these days, you can just say some phrase like Siri, Bixby, Google, and suddenly pull up anything you want from anywhere, right?
You're absolutely right. This is exactly what I'm referring to. It has an AI. It has a voice recognition. It has a camera. It could recognize your face. It could recognize everything around you. It could identify the birds, flowers. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a supercomputer in your pocket. And you're like, yeah, that's okay. VR headset is not that complicated comparing to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So with SciTech, kind of what's next? What are some future developments or features that you're super excited about?
No, we're excited. Going back to I will tell you some things, and I'm not going to tell you other things.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
but so AI is getting super exciting. So there are in areas where AI and people are afraid of AI. If you're working with AI, you really shouldn't. So, for example, we would love to be able to create a video based on a prompt. Not possible still. I mean, it's way too complicated, especially if you're getting humans involved, and this is way too complicated for a consumer market. For professionals, yes, you can play with it, but for the consumer market, to give it to our customers, like psychologists, psychiatrists, that's not a consumer product, where we could create a 360 image. And now our next version will be, in this 360 image, you will be able to move around. That's what's coming, and that's already a big thing, because if you created this for exposure therapy, or if you created it for mental wellness, you created your own little world and you could move around it. That's huge. You could add AI generated sounds. Again, it doesn't really matter, if it's a sound of the gunshot or fire engine, or something else. You could create your own sounds. That actually a pretty big step as well. We're actually experimenting with 3-4 other AI engines right now, and just to help, again, for anxiety, exposure therapy, anxiety, and mental wellness. I think also it's a great tool for example, for aging population, schizophrenia. It's a great tool for a whole bunch of other things, depending on where we want to go, or where kind of our customers wants to go, and our partners wants to go, because we do have a few partners who, they got their own ideas, and we're very happy to work with them, because we're just starting. I mean, the illusion that we know something, it's a complete illusion. We're just starting with AI. And again, people don't understand that AI started in the mid 60s. Virtual reality started in the mid 60s. And there's it's a new thing. Nothing of that is actually would qualify as a new thing. Computers are new, but again, even that is not that new. It started at the end of Second World War. So it's, but I think we created something, and we're just trying to figure out what exactly we created. And I think the psychology field could benefit greatly from that. Educational field could benefit greatly from that. Just to give you an idea, psychologists, right? So if we could put them in the shoes of their future patients, and we could show them how their future patients, what do they feel? That would, I think, would make a difference, because that's really important, that sort of thing. So the possibility for virtual reality, and combined with AI, combined with the other technologies, are huge. I can see. I mean, there are some barriers, like for example, FDA. Like for example, if we'll want to go to with a schizophrenia kind of route, we have to work with FDA. Like this is a given, right? So do we want to deal with the FDA? Nobody wants to deal with the FDA.
True.
So if you can avoid FDA, that probably would be a good thing. But there are endless possibilities, and I see this. We have these weekly meetings, for example, at VR Association, and people are coming and talking to us, and kind of telling us what else they've done, or whatever they're thinking to do. I think it's wonderful. I think we're just starting to realize what could be done with it, and very exciting. I mean, I feel like I remember these thousands and this .com and all these things when people were creating, and it was very exciting. That people had an idea, they would go and create something. That's how it feels like, because people are creating something like every day, and this is super exciting.
Yeah, it's all these crazy new innovations and all these new things like we've been talking about. Peter, again, thank you again so much for your time. It's been great to have you on the show, and I want to be respectful. I will ask one last question. I always ask this. Do you have any book recommendations?
I do, and my favorite, my favorite author is Thomas Sowell. Just pick one. Doesn't really matter. I've read tons of his books, and I love Thomas Sowell. And if you would pick one book, I would definitely go with the Thomas Sowell.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check them out. Thanks again for your time, Peter. It's been great
Thank
having you
you.
here.
Thank you.